Welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. It's great to be back from vacation. Super busy last 5 days while I was not in the state and trying to keep up with all the news. And here I see this mass amnesty bill that is being floated out there, discussions about maybe there are some people who we should, create situations for that they can stay and everything. That's not really the America First campaign message that was sent by President Trump. It hasn't been his policy. Why are there bipartisan efforts right now to make that the case? Let's talk to Senator Eric Schmitt, who joins us once again. Of course, the United States Senator representing Missouri, joining us here on the Annie Frey Show. Senator, thanks for being with us today. It's good to have you back on the show.
Good to be back with you, Annie.
Talk to me about this mass amnesty bill. Like, what is it almost seems like the heart on your sleeve compassion, the way it's being put forward. But at the same time, like, where do we draw the line and how do you do something like that and still prioritize the Americans that are in this country that are in need of the taxpayer funds that be taking out of their pockets? How do you do both?
Well, we're not doing that bill. I don't know what else to say. I think a few people have filed it and they're talking about it, but I just don't think there's any appetite to deal with this after we just suffered, 4 years of mass migration in this country, 15 to 20 million people here illegally. We got enough work with deporting people who shouldn't be here. And I think that's what our focus ought to be: border security and keeping this country safe. I mean, we see over and over and over and over every day a news story about an illegal immigrant murdering or raping or terrorizing a community. And that's where our focus should be. And so I'm not going to get into what's in the heart of people who are proposing this. I don't know. I've not talked to them about it. This is a kind of a House thing where there's, a handful of people that have filed this. People are talking about it, and that's fine. But I can just tell you there's just no appetite right now to go in that direction.
You mentioned about keeping people safe, and it's very popular. It's a very bipartisanly popular policy to say if you came here illegally, you should go home. And the United States has been actually, I think, pretty generous in saying, hey, if you want to self-deport, we'll kind of set you up. There are some opportunities for people to do that and come back once again. You've talked about something going on in Missouri, cooperation that can exist between state and local law enforcement to help deport these people in safer parameters that in my home state of Illinois doesn't exist because we're a sanctuary state and all of that nonsense. How do you see that manifesting here in Missouri? It needs to be replicated across the country.
I mean, so basically the policy of the United States of America forever has been if you're here illegally, you're deported unless you have a valid asylum claim. Many of those are often bogus. 9 out of 10 of them are bogus. And so, unless you're coming here legally, there is a path to do that. But what we've seen is, again, all of this flood of illegal immigration over the last, 4 years of Joe Biden. And so what a non-sanctuary jurisdiction like the state of Missouri does, there's no city that's thankfully no sanctuary jurisdiction in the state. So when someone's being released from prison, local authorities, and they have and they're here illegally, they notify ICE so that when they're released, when they literally walk out of the prison, they're handed over safely and orderly to an ICE agent, and then that deportation process then moves forward. The dirty little secret about what happens in sanctuary jurisdictions like J.B. Pritzker's Illinois or what was going on in Minneapolis is this is the most obvious thing that happens. Think about it. A rapist, somebody that is carjacked, and they're an illegal alien, those sanctuary jurisdictions will not notify ICE when they're leaving prison, meaning they're just released out into the communities and out onto the streets. That's how crazy this ideology is. They would rather not deport people than have these people, back out onto the streets. So it's, I think that's what people probably don't even know. And here's the difference too, Annie, is that takes a couple of ICE agents to go there and meet up and be there when they're released, as opposed to having to go into a neighborhood or into a community where you need more protection, more people. So it saves resources. It's a safer thing to do to just be able to notify people when they're coming out of prison.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And as a resident of Illinois, sure doesn't make me feel safer to be living in a state where people who want to commit crimes know that they're going to have a better chance of getting free after they get, bounced for something that they did, that they're not going to be deported because they came to my state instead of your state. That's very frustrating as an Illinois resident. I want to talk about the Save America Act. Certainly, Senator Mike Lee is all over X about this. It's what he tweets about all the time. And I keep watching, and it keeps not happening. Is the Save America Act ever going to get passed?
I hope so. It will take a tremendous amount of time and effort to get it done. I'm on board with it. I have been since day one as an original co-sponsor, and then I worked with President Trump. He talked to me about handling the provision that, not only would we include in the Save America Act the, you have to be a U.S. citizen and have show photo ID, but making sure we're getting rid of these mail-in balloting scams, make sure there's no men and women's sports, and that we end this transgender mutilation for minors. So those are 5 overwhelmingly popular things in essentially the substitute that's before the Senate. The Democrats have blocked it. We would have to spend a lot of time to go do it. I support it, doing that, but there has to be an allocation of time to do it. And I would tell you the other thing that's I just got out of our Senate lunch and the topic of discussion, we're going to make sure that we fully fund Border Patrol and ICE. The Democrats had blocked that. We can move forward with reconciliation. I would expect that process to begin in the next few days here, with hopefully something on the floor next week. It'll take a few weeks to go back and forth with the House, but we're just not going to let the Democrats get away with blockading that money for deportations. That in many ways, a lot of the 24 election was based on this. And the Democrats, a few years ago, they wanted to fund the police. Now they wanted to fund ICE. This is just a same movie, different year.
Yeah, 100%. Eric Schmitt, senator from the state of Missouri, speaking with us here on the Annie Frey Show. I want to ask you your thoughts, wide open question on the replacing of Attorney General Pam Bondi with the acting Attorney General Blanche being in there. Seems like a lot of people are supportive of him. He's not as big of a political name as maybe Bondi was or some other people. A lot of people like your name for the job. What do you think about the president's willingness to replace Pam Bondi? What direction is he hoping to see the Justice Department go?
Well, I know Todd. I like Todd Blanche. He was sort of in the foxhole with the president in a lot of those when the Democrats were trying to put him in jail for the rest of his life. I went up there for one of those days of that trial. There were, I think, just a few senators that did that. I thought that was important to support President Trump at a really difficult time. And Todd's a very skilled, successful lawyer that left a successful private practice and has been the deputy attorney general, which basically it kind of like the COO of that office, like the AG's out front doing a lot of things in a very important position, but the deputy AG is a very, very important role. And so I think they're valuing that kind of continuity right now. And, the president always has the ability to go in a different direction. And so for right now, Todd Blanche is there. I think he's got broad support, and they have a lot of work to do. They still have a lot of work to do. And you've probably read, it's public information. There's some activity in pursuing some of I think a lot of the activity that Brennan and Clapper and Comey were involved with to take down a president. I just don't think you can let that stuff slide. I think there have to be repercussions and accountability. And I think that'll be a focus of the Department of Justice, basically to hold the people accountable that weaponized the DOJ for 4 years, that went after Catholics, that went after, the former president and chief political opponent. All these things that we saw, we can't ever let that happen again. And so I think having somebody in that role that's serious about it is important.
There are a few things that those who voted for President Trump or that have seen some of the things that have come to light, the evidence that has been shown about what was done to President Trump in a deep state-like government. There are a few things that Americans want more than to actually know that the government bureaucracy can be held accountable.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that the government, the deep state, can actually be held accountable?
I hope so. I believe that it has to happen. I know that, in my time when I was Attorney General of Missouri, we had a laser-like focus on this of taking on the excesses of government, whether it was people's free speech rights or the COVID tyranny that we saw, or just the manipulation we saw with the student debt forgiveness scam. And I think that what the Democrats were willing to do with the power that they had in that period of time, including and especially going after their chief political rival, is something out of a Banana Republic or or the Soviet Union in the 1980s. And so I sure hope that people will be held accountable for that.
Senator Schmitt, before we let you go, big news, allegations made in Southern California from a fifth accuser, from Representative Eric Swalwell, which my understanding is maybe he's resigned. I know it was going to potentially happen this afternoon. We also know of a Republican Gonzalez representative who has stepped down amid, an affair and an unfortunate suicide that took place after that. I think a lot of people on the outside are looking into the swamp going, what kind of ethical standards exist there? You're there. I know you come home like every weekend to be with your family. Looking from the outside in, it just looks really, really messy. And I'm wondering what you think about how party affects the accountability that needs to be had for the people who represent us.
Yeah, no, I can understand that sentiment. I mean, you look at some of this activity and it's like dirtball behavior. So I certainly appreciate how people feel about it. I didn't really know either one of those guys on the House side. Swalwell really seems like a bad actor. He was on the Congressional baseball team as like a pinch runner, and I think he tripped over second base one time. That's really the extent to which I know Eric Swalwell. But I mean, you see all this stuff coming out. It looks pretty bad, and so I think people should expect that their representatives are people that they would trust, and I certainly try to live up to that every day that I hear and honor the trust that the voters have given me to come here to do a good job, and I do. You're like you said, I go back and forth every week, and the hardest part about the job for me is that you're away from your family during the week. So that's just kind of how I try to live my life.
Is it hard? I mean, I had a longer form conversation with you about this when I visited DC about a year ago, about like, how do you stay grounded? Because it's just such a powerful place, and once you go there, you're leaving everything that keeps you grounded, and the accountability of like being around people who know you in your air quotes real life.
Right.
How I mean, I guess we know how you stay grounded. Is it uncommon for people to stay grounded, or is it more common than we might hear because it's not in the headlines?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of good people here. But then there's, like I said, with any kind of walk of life, there's just some scumbags too. And, so I don't know. I really don't. I don't know how people do it. I mean, I don't, it's crazy. So I just try to do a good job. I would say that I think I shared with you in that interview we did in my office that I think my son has had that kind of impact on me over the years with his diagnosis and special needs and being nonverbal and the seizures. And I just try not to take things for granted. And this is all a gift. And I just want to try to maximize my time that I have doing this job. And I also think that people can kind of get big egos. And I'm often reminded of Patton kind of laid out. If you watch the end of the movie Patton, he gives this famous kind of story about this Roman generals, rolling through, and he's this parade and all the animals and armaments that they've captured, and he's being celebrated, and a slave whispers into his ear that all glory is fleeting. So, this is a temporary job that I have, and I try to approach it with that kind of humility. And for me, that works. Again, I can't speak to what other people do or they don't do.
Senator Schmitt, thank you for the time today. We appreciate it. We hope you have great fortune with the Save America Act. Keep pushing on it and keep holding people accountable there in D.C. We're grateful for it.
Thanks, Annie. Okay.
Bye-bye. Senator Eric Schmitt, now I'm going to